That was taken on their wedding day.
Let's see.
I knew that would bring some. Yes, it was. I'm not kidding. It was taken on their wedding day.
They're so happy.
And now that's the punchline.
Mm-hmm.
My great grandparents lived in the 1800s. That's long before you and I ever thought of it. In those days, you had to sit still for the camera. Maybe you've seen on TV where the photographer would hold up a staff, and on the top of it was a little tray of gunpowder, and he would ignite that with it and make the flash. That's how they had a flash for the camera. But the camera had to stay open for some time. I wasn't there, but for about a minute or 2 minutes at a time. The camera shutter, the lens had to stay open long enough for that image to be burned on what they called a tin plate in those days. Have you ever seen a tin pipe or a tin pipe? You ever seen one of those pictures in those days? Wow, this is an education. And so people had to sit there for so long and wait for the flash and wait for the camera and all those things. They didn't smile for pictures. As a matter of fact, in those days, it was actually kind of considered rude to be smiling. They thought, well, you're kind of smirking at something. What's so funny? You know, it was that kind of an attitude. And so my great-grandparents, on their wedding day, sat for this picture. I still have it. I took the picture of it. I have it I inherited it from my grandparents and my mother, finally, and it hangs in my living room over my chair, so that I always have to behave, because you see they're sternly looking down at me. But that's my grandparents. Do you know what Jesus looks like? You ever seen Jesus? Have you heard people talk about what he looks like? What have you heard? He's what? Mixed? Like a mixed race, you mean? Yeah, actually, I think from where he lived in those days, his skin was closer to your color than mine. He was a dark-skinned man. What else do we know about Jesus and how he looked? You know, in the Bible, I won't take time now, but the Bible is, you see the picture on the back of the cover, I was going to tell you about that. That is a gold leaf frame. Now, I tell everybody, I think that's worth $1 million. Probably isn't worth anything, but it was hand carved with gold leaf paint. Very, very nice frame, very beautiful frame to frame the picture of those people. Well, see, our Bible is the frame for our picture of Jesus. The only thing we know about him, as you said, is that he was probably dark-skinned, because he came from that part of the world where people were just dark-skinned. And actually, the sun's a lot more than any of us are today. And plus he was a carpenter, so he worked outside. I would say he probably had a suntan besides. And that's just a factual observation. But other than that, we really don't know what he looked like, do we? Well, in Isaiah, it says that he was so plain that if he walked by you, you're sitting on a bench in a park, and somebody just walked by, it was Jesus, you wouldn't even recognize it. You wouldn't think twice to even look at him. Isaiah says he's so plain, or was so plain, that he was nothing that we would think about. There were no features that stood out about him. I see a young lady with beautiful hair. That stands out. That makes you beautiful. Not just your hair. You're all beautiful people because you're children of God. But you see, that stands out. Your hair is beautiful. Isaiah says Jesus was nothing. You would nothing that you would remember. And yet the Bible gives us the framework to see Jesus as he really is. I'm going to talk about that more in the message here in a few minutes. But I want you to remember, you young people have never seen Jesus. Obviously, none of us have. But too many young people are not seeing Jesus, in the God gave us, God the Father in heaven, gave us this Bible to be the framework, the picture that we can see Jesus. And a lot of young people don't come to church today. I'm so proud of all of you that you come and be a part of God's Word. Hear what God has to say to you, just as well as when Pastor O'Brien and I are preaching, one of us or the other, and we stand up here in front, we're not just preaching to a certain age group, because God's Word is for you also. And you can take that Word. It's not just something to hear on Sunday. Okay, I'll give God an hour, and then the rest of the week I'll do my own thing. God's Word is the Word that you can take with you and make part of your life. Make Jesus a part of your life. And that frame and that picture that we talk about, this framework of the Bible, being the picture of Christ, tells us more about Him than any other thing that we know about Him. That picture, you can make part of your life. And you know how we talked in the readings this morning, talk about people gathering riches. I mean, it's hard for a rich man to go through heaven, to get to heaven, as it is for a rich man to go through an eye. A camel, not a rich man, a camel to go through the eye. I mean, I'll get the description right actually. But that's true. Don't worry about gathering material things. Seek Christ first. And He tells us, He promises that what you need for your life, all these other things will be given unto you. He promises that. Take that promise, put it in your heart, and take it with you. And hear now in a few minutes what else Jesus has to say to each of you about how you can grow in your lives and be the best people you can possibly be. Christian people, followers of Jesus Christ. Okay? Thanks for coming.